tell you a story. This one is about a beautiful woman. Her name's Maria. She lived a long, long time ago in this quaint little village in Mexico. She worked as a servant under one of the noblemen of the land, serving the house and the family that lived in the mansion. She lived with all the other servants in this small house that was on the mansion grounds. And she was said to be gorgeous, with beautiful olive skin, long, dark, wavy hair that flowed gently with the tropical winds. And she had a really kind, gentle smile. As time went on and months turned into years, she became well acquainted with the family. Well, more so with the family's eldest son. Let's call him Antonio. At first, Maria was only sent over as a maid to serve Antonio and his friends whenever they came over. But eventually, with each interaction, Maria and Antonio seemed to form a bond. It started as a minor acknowledgement, just a silent nod from Antonio as a thank you whenever Maria came over to serve them tea and food. Those nods, they slowly turned into tiny smiles whenever she entered the room. And eventually, it got to the point that any time he came over, he would specifically request for her, just to see her. Or at least that was what the other servants in the quarters teased her about. Maria and Antonio, though, they never interacted more than that in the beginning. But Maria could sense a slight change in their interactions. She genuinely thought that he was just being kind in the beginning. But the more that he called for her, the more he seemed to seek her out. Even when she was working around the house, their interactions seemed almost intentional. So when he finally started approaching her just to talk to her, she wasn't that surprised. Sometimes in the library, they would talk. Sometimes in the courtyard, behind the bushes that were tall enough to hide the both of them. And sometimes he would come in the kitchen when she was working. But always when there was no one around. Slowly, Maria's heart softened, and the two of them got closer and closer, so much that one day Antonio professes his love for her. And she loves him back too. But Antonio's parents don't know about this though, and if they did, they probably turned a blind eye to this because they definitely would not have allowed him to marry beneath their status. So Antonio and Maria, they kept their relationship a secret and continued on in private. And even when Maria got pregnant with twins, one boy and one girl, neither of them had the courage to reveal their relationship. Time went on, the twins grew older. Antonio visited and took care of them whenever he could. And their relationship, it was still a secret. But Antonio was the eldest son of his family. So when his family deemed that it was time for him to settle down, he could not hide his relationship any longer. He reveals Maria and his two children to his family. They were angry, of course, and completely disapproved of the relationship. They even urged him to let Maria go. They wanted him to marry someone they could approve of, someone that they deemed worthy, and they even tried to reason with Antonio. They told him, Antonio, the church even doesn't recognize your relationship between you and Maria. It will be very easy for you to leave her. But no matter what they tell him, he's adamant. Maria is the love of his life, the mother of his children. He was not going to abandon her. He was not going to abandon his family. But just as adamant as he was, so were his parents. Maria knew of the fights between Antonio and his parents. She hoped and prayed and begged that he would not abandon her and her children. And in the beginning, Antonio held up, standing by her against his parents. But when the pressure from his parents grew, more and more every single day, he finally gives in. Antonio goes to Maria one day and he's devastated, and he tells her that he needs to follow his parents, that he needs to marry this other woman and give his family the heir that they want. But he promises Maria, he tells her, pleading with her, I will take care of you and the kids. I promise not to abandon you. I will visit you as often as I can. Maria was already devastated, and his words just brought out the rage in her. She kicks him out and cuts off all contact with him. She doesn't even allow him to see the kids. Time goes on and she sees the wedding preparations begin. And with every passing day, the wedding date comes near. Antonio comes by occasionally, trying to get her to see reason, but she's heartbroken. The wedding preparations were just further proof that she and her kids had been abandoned by the man that promised to love her for the rest of her life. And she could not get over that betrayal. So, on the day of the wedding, she just needs to see it for herself. So she dresses herself up in this neat white dress. She doesn't want to be recognized, so she wears this veil over her head. And she stands in the back of the church. Once all the processions was over, she heads straight home, sobbing the entire way, and in her heartbreak, completely unaware of her actions, she takes her children, goes to the nearby river, and drowns them. When she finally comes to and realizes what she has done, she lets out this wail of agony, and she could no longer live with herself. She had lost everything. Her love of her life, who now belonged to another woman, her children that she herself killed, she had nothing now. So, she did the one thing that seemed to make sense for her at that time. And she jumps into the river, drowning herself and ending her own life. But when she finally goes up to the pearly gates, she's asked, "Where are your children?" And then she remembers what happened, but she's utterly ashamed, and with the guilt eating her up, she tells the angel, "I don't know." And the angel tells her, "Go and search for your children. You cannot rest until they are found." So now, Maria spends the rest of her undead life wandering around the rivers looking for her children. She calls for them and wails and searches for them, and hence given the name La Llorona. That was only one version of the story, though. Another version states that La Llorona was with an already married man and had a child with him. Other sources state that she killed her kids and herself in this jealous rage when she found that her husband was with another younger woman. Another source, though, says that she was just a negligent mother and that she failed to protect her kids when they were playing by the river, and so when they drowned, she kills herself in grief. But one version of the story relates the tale of La Llorona to an indigenous woman, La Malinche. She was said to serve Hernan Cortes as his interpreter, but she was also his mistress who had children with him. Either way, both figures share this same tragic narrative of being abandoned by a powerful man, and also the loss of their children. So it is said that the depiction of La Llorona is also seen as the symbol of indigenous suffering. Therefore, one of the other interpretations of the history of La Llorona states that she's an Aztec goddess that is mourning the loss of an entire civilization. And that concept had then been mixed into the Mexican tale as a depiction of this desperate mother. The story of La Llorona, it had been passed down through oral retellings, and as such, it had permeated throughout the Latin American region. Some parts of the world, they see her as this tragic figure that wanders by the water bodies, searching for her children, just trying to absolve herself of this guilt. Other regions, they focus more on the affair part of the story. They say that La Llorona morphs into this beautiful woman. She waits by the side of the road that is nearby the river, waiting for someone to stop by and give her a ride. She stands in this long white dress with flowing hair, waiting for a man to pick her up, and when one finally does, and they happen to fall for her seduction, she transforms into this being with long talon-like fingers and slashes them up. But whichever version of the story you're listening to, all of them see her as this presence that terrorized children, or men, depending on the version of the story. And now it is told as a warning to the children to make sure that they don't misbehave. Don't go out into the night or La Llorona is gonna get you. Don't go by the lake or La Llorona will come and drown you. Either way, over time, the story of La Llorona started off as this simple ghost story to now symbolizing female pain and sometimes even a critique of the patriarchal structures that exist and the pressures that women face due to its demands. But is the entity real? People who have claimed to have seen her or heard her wail say that she appears during nighttime or dusk, alongside the rivers and other water bodies where she will be crying out for her children. In some cultures, it is said that hearing the wails of La Llorona means that you are marked for death. It is generally advised, to go the opposite direction when you hear the wail of La Llorona, which is something one of my friend's dads did not do. According to him, he and his friends went camping one weekend. They find this nice camping spot, set up for the night, and just as they were about to turn in for the night, they hear the sound from the distance. Listen, if I were to ever go camping and I hear a sound in the woods, which I would never go camping, but if I were to go camping and we hear a sound in the woods, no, we didn't. But my friend's dad, he, along with his friends, they hear a sound and they go investigate. They follow the sound slowly, just relying on their hearing in the darkness. And they come by the riverbed. And in the distance, they see this large mound that seems to be moving. And they're confused. They walk closer, slowly, step by step, trying not to bring attention to themselves. But in the darkness, one of his friends accidentally steps on a twig and breaks it. And the entity's head just snaps up, the hair flailing about, and they see her hands with talons. That was the last thing that they saw before he and his friends ran back to the car and hightailed it out of there. So, be careful. Whenever you're at a water body, you might encounter La Llorona. And that's where I'm going to leave you tonight. Sweet dreams. Good night.